Okay guys, so this is part 2 of test 2. I stopped with number 8. Number 8. Which of the following best describes the range of the graph below? Now remember, X and Y went to the doctor. If we're looking at range, we're specifically looking at which Y values we're using, which means we're going to focus on the Y axis. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to exaggerate this line, and then because I have an arrow that is pointing up, I'm going to put an infinity above. And since this arrow is also pointing to the left, I'm going to have an infinity, negative infinity, since I have negative numbers that way. I don't have any arrows pointing down or to the right. So that means that if I try to draw a box, I will have sides there. Since I don't really have a top or a right side, I'm just going to draw a phantom line so that my box doesn't look too weird. Okay, so I'm looking at range, which means I'm looking at the Y values. I'm focusing on the Y axis, which goes up and down. And let me erase that because that might be a little bit confusing. And here, since I don't have an infinity below, I do have a number there. To find the top and the bottom of my box, since my y-axis goes up and down, I have to look at my y-axis, and here I see that the number for the bottom is going to be 2. So my range is going to go from 2 to positive infinity. I have a y in the middle. I am using 2, so I'm going to put a line underneath, and y is less than infinity. Okay, so basically this is saying, if you think of a crocodile, the crocodile wants to eat all the y values. He doesn't want to eat the 2. So that means that I'm using 2 and everything up bigger than 2, right? Because my line's never going to stop going up. Which means that my range is greater than or equal to 2. My answer is C. And if you look at any other answer choice here, we're not using 3. We're using 2 and everything that's bigger than 2. So you can automatically eliminate A and B. And we're not using any number that's less than 2 on our y-axis because we don't have anything below that. So C actually makes sense. Number 9. Which of the following has a linear parent function? So we have to start with number 1. Since we're given points, we have to start by making ourselves a table. I have 1 and 2, 5 and 6, 9 and 10, and 10 and 11. Now notice how my points, my x values were all in order. If they had not been in order, then my first responsibility, the first thing I would have done would have been to put them in order. To go from 1 to 5, I have to add 4. To go from 2 to 6, I add 4. To go from 5 to 9, I add 4. From 9 to 10, I add 1. To go from 6 to 10, I add 4. To go from 10 to 11, I add 1. Okay, so now I have to look at the rate of change. Now, if you remember, rate of change is the change in y over the change in x, and that is not going to fit, so I'm going to go ahead and erase it. Rate of change is the change in y over the change in x. And so, to find the rate of change of these first 2 points, we're going to do my rate of change of the y, which is 4, over the rate of change of my x, which is 4, which is going to give me 1. To find the rate of change of the second and third points, I'm going to do the rate of change of y, which again is 4, over the rate of change of the x, which again is 4, which is 1. find the rate of change of the third and fourth points, I would do the rate of change of the y, which is 1, over the rate of change of the x, which is, over the change in the x, which is 1. 1 divided by 1 is 1. And I can see that all of my rates of change are 1. They're all the same, which means that this is linear. Number 2, number 2 and number 3, I'm giving equations. Now remember, just like you only have 2 biological parents, you have 2 parent functions in algebra 1, y equals x and y equals x squared. In number 2, does number 2 look like y equals x, since that is a parent function of a linear function? Yes, it does. So number 2 is linear. How about number 3? Number 3 looks more like a quadratic function. So 3 is not linear. My answer choice is 1 and 2, so my answer is A. Number 10. Which of the following statements are true about the given function below? So we first have to determine whether it is linear or quadratic. Again, we're going to do that by looking at the rate of change. I'm going to list my x's from smallest to biggest. -4, -2, -4 goes with 21, -2 goes with 1. Then I have 0, 2, and the very last one is 4 and 37. Okay, so to go from -4 to -2, I have to add 2. To go from 21 to 1, I have to subtract, and I have to subtract 20. So my rate of change for the first 2 points is going to be the change in the y, which is -20, over the change in the x, which is 2, which gives me -10. Okay. To go from -2 to 2, from -2 to 0, I have to add 2. To go from 1 to -3, I have to subtract. 4, because we're going from a bigger number to a smaller number. So my rate of change here would be the change in the y, which is -4, over the change in the x, which is 2, which is -2. And I'm just going to try out one more. To go from 0 to 2, I have to add 2. To go from -3 to 9, I have to add 12. So my rate of change is going to be the change in the y, which is 12, over the change in the x, which is 2. My rate of change is 6. Looking at these 3 rates of change, I can already see that they're all different, which means that I'm looking at something that is quadratic. I can cross out A, and then I can also cross out C, because y equals x is the parent function of a linear function. So let's look at D. The equation of the parent function is y equals 2x squared plus 2x minus 3. Well, remember, we only have 2 parents, y equals x and y equals x squared. This is not the equation of any parent function. That's totally wrong. Our answer has to be B. The function is quadratic.